I often say if you're not a feminist, then you're a bigot. I mean, there is nothing in between.
So the other day, I posted something on Twitter, a little observation. I don't know if it was an interesting observation. I don't know if it was good, if it was clever. A lot of people didn't seem to think it was. Feminism is the idea that we can make both sexes equal by focusing solely on the issues of one of them. For the next 24 hours, I heard from feminists about how ignorant that statement is. All the while, I'm thinking, and I thought it was harmless. I thought it was a pretty harmless statement. Not even a particularly venomous criticism of feminism. All it's saying is, hey, maybe we should kind of focus on the other half of the population too. But no, feminists explain to me that all inequality that exists between the genders favors men over women. All of it. Every single instance of inequality between the genders favors men and subjugates women. That is their contention. So, with my tiny little male brain, I pointed out that domestic violence against men is nearly as common as domestic violence against women, but it's not taken as seriously by the media, by the police, by anyone. Men are not treated anywhere near fairly when it comes to child custody, when it comes to who has to make child support payments, when it comes to reproductive rights. Female genital mutilation is considered horrible and abhorrent, and it should be. But male genital mutilation? That's still standard operating procedure throughout much of the US. Most people don't even have a problem with it. Think about that. It is permissible. I mean, just remove yourself from the cultural context for a second and think to yourself that if you live in America, you live in a country where it's just standard procedure to chop off part of a boy's penis when he's born. And don't say that it's just a piece of skin. So is your fucking eyelid. You wouldn't want that chopped off. It evolved there for a reason. And if there's really such a compelling case to get rid of it, then why don't you let people decide to get rid of it as adults? I'd have no problem with circumcision if it was voluntary, if it was made by people who have the ability to consent and not just performed on babies arbitrarily for mostly religious reasons. Women are sentenced to 40% less prison time than men for equivalent crimes. So, if you're a man and you steal something, and you're a woman and you steal the exact same thing under the exact same circumstances, you're going to get 40% less time, statistically. And let's not forget that it's only men who have to sign up for the selective services in the United States. We can be drafted. You know, your wife, your girlfriend, your sister, your mom, they can't be drafted. That's not going to happen to them. No one's going to strap a rifle in their hands and send them overseas to go kill people that have never wronged them. I pointed all those things out, and I honestly, maybe in my naivete, expected some measure of concession, some measure of, well, yeah, I can see your point. But no, the feminists would concede nothing. They still felt that it was absolutely preposterous that I would dare to suggest that there are men's rights issues. No such thing exists. They totally reject it on a visceral level without even considering it, without even looking at the data, without even, giving a cursory glance to the evidence. They completely reject it offhand, doesn't exist. Don't ever bring that in front of me again. Why don't they believe it? Why don't they accept it? Even when I show them data, why do they just dismiss it offhand? It's because they believe in something called the patriarchy. And that's not something that is exclusive to radical feminists. All feminists believe in the patriarchy. It's part of feminist theory. The patriarchy, according to Wikipedia, is a social system in which the role of the male as the primary authority figure is central to social organization and where fathers hold authority over women, children, and property. It implies the institutions of male rule and privilege and entails female subordination. This is integral. This is key. This is the cornerstone of all feminist theory. And it's completely bogus. It's wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. You see, when I brought up those men's rights issues to the feminists, a lot of them just rejected them offhand. But a few of them said, yeah, those are real. But they too are caused by the patriarchy. It's still those same male control roles that create these problems for men. Now, there's no doubt that 200 years ago, patriarchy would have been an apt description of how Americans lived. Even 50 years ago, you might have been able to get away with that. But now, I have to ask, if the patriarchy is real, why would it disadvantage men at all? Why would men, if we were looking to exploit women and run the whole show, say to ourselves, men should pay more child support, and fathers should have less rights, and men should have less reproductive rights than women? Why would we say that? If we were really running the show, if it was really all about what we wanted, why would we give ourselves such a raw deal when it came to that? Why wouldn't we, the males who are in control, pour way more money into women's cancer research than to men's cancer research? Wouldn't you think that we would care more about ourselves? If it was really a patriarchy and women were just property, wouldn't we say, fuck that breast cancer shit, we gotta solve our problems? If your woman dies, you just get a new woman, you know what I'm saying? Why wouldn't we send the women to fight the wars? Why wouldn't we give them harsher sentences for the same crime? Why would we as a society kind of look the other way when a woman hits a man, but lose our shit when a man hits a woman? Why would men, if we're trying to subjugate women and make them our subordinates, create a system like that? The reason that so many men like me reject the notion of a patriarchy is because we don't view women as inferior. We don't sit around all day pressing our fingers together and cackling like how best to subjugate women today. So when we hear that we're part of some horrible patriarchy, we completely reject the notion. Especially when we look at the facts, when we look at the reality, when we realize that there's a lot of sexism against us. Feminists are right about one thing. Gender roles are the problem. And both sides have grievances. No one should be a feminist, nor should anyone start calling themselves something ridiculous like a masculinist. You can't be for the rights of one or the other. If you're truly for equality, you have to be for the rights of both. You have to address every unfairness, whether it's an unfairness towards women or an unfairness towards men, because there are unfairnesses towards both out there, and you don't lose ground by accepting that premise. And the way that feminists argue with something like what I'm saying is they show our history, and they show that for the majority of history, men had all the power. Yeah, but men were also expected to do all the work. They were also expected to fight and die in all the wars that the kings wanted to wage. Women weren't expected to go to war and die. Women weren't expected to be the breadwinners. We were given more power, sure, but we were given a lot more responsibility too. And you have to remember, how much power did the average peasant really have? How much power did the average serf really have? When it comes to the distribution of power, you're going to find that it's always been the rich have power and the poor don't. Not the men have power and the women don't. But we need to reject all that shit. Everyone deserves equal rights. Everyone deserves the equal ability to accumulate whatever power and influence they can within their lives, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. I think we all agree on that. And that's why I've taken to calling myself a universal human self-determinist. And I know it's a mouthful, but it's a fuck of a lot better than calling yourself a feminist or a masculinist, which is an absurd term to me. So I've been called a misogynist and a sexist and a pig by a lot of feminists for a while now because of some of the videos I've made on the topic of feminism. But all I've ever believed in is equality between the genders. And that means both ways. And if you can't accept that, then you are the sexist, not me. I'm the Amazing Atheist.